All right, we're live. Welcome everybody. Episode 4 of the Coach's Table. Coach Adam, how you doing?
I'm doing really well today. How about yourself, Coach?
I'm doing well.
Should we announce our guest speaker?
Would you like to do the honors?
And you know what? Age before beauty, Coach. Please, by all means.
Age before beauty.
You like that?
Matt Sims, how you doing?
Matt Sims, ladies and gentlemen, in the house.
I hope you cleared your schedule. We're going Joe Rogan style. It's gonna be about 3 hours.
Let's do it.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, ready to go.
Yeah, well, I have a client in an hour, so I'll probably be leaving you two to continue this. But
and I have a life too, so I have to go soon. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
But we appreciate your time. Glad to have you here.
Me. Yeah.
How's everything been?
Everything's going really well. Just working, training, coaching, a little bit of everything. Really just trying to find balance in my life, like we all are. And trying to continue to learn and, get better as a person, as a player, and as a coach.
That's good to hear.
That's very media trained.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
100%.
You heard that, right?
This guy's a pro.
Ladies and gentlemen,
doubt.
he had that written out on his phone.
I was trained, media-wise by the Jets, so we'll see how great that really is. But,
yeah. I'm sure it's great, grade A.
Yeah.
Just to go off of that, saying with regards to balancing, how has that been for you with regards to like training? Obviously, still active within the NFL, trying to find your way with the team of some sort, and then also your coaching too, and then personal life and stuff. How are you able to balance all that on a day-to-day basis?
Obviously, like with everyone, in their own personal lives, I feel like some days it's easier than others. Some days it's easy, some days it just flows and you're feeling great, you're on the path, right, that you want to be on. And then other days you're just like, damn, I gotta get control of this. I gotta grab the reins a little bit more. So that varies, just like the seasons of our life, I feel like that's the same way too as well with just everyday life and everyday grind as far as trying to find your purpose. But for me, right now, this time period, I feel like I'm in a really good groove and a good place and really happy with the direction I'm going in as far as training and coaching too as well.
That's good. Now, if I could just dive a little bit deeper, right now you're a current free agent, correct?
Correct.
So when you were on an active roster,
Yes.
whether it be on the roster itself or the practice squad, how was that lifestyle compared to, being a little bit more flexible, I would say, or maybe not, with your hours being a free agent? Like, was it a little bit more intense? Was it a little bit, handle a little bit better throughout your years in the league? Like, how would you say that fared?
Well, I would say the main difference is that, like, when I was on the practice squad or a roster right in the NFL, I knew exactly what was asked of me every day, So I knew Monday was the off day where we're, getting, back from the game, watching the film, going through those next steps. Then it's like Tuesday, your first day into the next opponent and breaking that down. Wednesday, your first practice, right? Thursday, red zone, third down. Friday, red zone stuff again, short yardage special situations. Saturday, prep before the game. Sunday, the game. And then it's like, then repeat. And I try to emulate somewhat of a similar type of process for myself and my own individual life. So when, I do get that opportunity to go back, I'm not completely just overwhelmed by being on their schedule and their clock.
Makes sense.
So a lot of the things for me, I kind of prep in thinking I'm getting ready for the weekend.
Yeah.
And not how we say that nowadays where it's like ready for the weekend, right? But it's ready for, to perform well on the weekend.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it's fascinating bringing that up. Just being, obviously, me myself never even played a lick of football, but understanding that process is pretty crazy because people don't think about that. That obviously we know they're prepping for the game, they're practicing for the game, right?
Right.
But breaking that down, how you just did day by day, and and what the goal of each day is up to game day,
Right,
is pretty cool. So it kind of makes me think, talk a little bit about the adjustments you had to go through from playing high-level elite high school football, collegiate football, pro, is like the differences in each step.
Ah, man, loaded question, tough. I mean,
I'm
just
good.
a lot. Yeah.
This can go on for days.
Yeah, seriously, it's like 7 hours later. But, the thing is, I was fortunate enough for me to be coached and groomed by, great coaches at a young age, including my father, including guys like Bill Parisi and Martin Rooney. And Phil Sims.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Ex.
Just had to slide that one in there.
Phil Sims, ex-Giant. But yeah, just, obviously being his son, my brother being the way that he was, even with the fact too of just like I said, like with Coach Toll, with Martin Rooney, with Bill Parisi, with those guys, right? I think I was given a really good foundation that prepared me for those next levels, and I was in a way kind of like already at those next levels in some ways without even really realizing it. And I think that's why sometimes my transition was relatively easy as far as that goes. I think the biggest thing that a lot of guys had trouble with from my Bosco teams and even from just general teams in this area is we get so caught up in like the love for our coach and that community. You kind of forget that you got to find that same like love for like a new coach and the new community every time that you start new.
Absolutely.
Right. So you're in a constant like state of just like, I just arrived, while still reminding people that like, you know, tomorrow could be the last day you ever see me too, you know, and that's kind of something I always try to keep in mind as well.
It's just cool because for all the same reasons that being who you are and where you were made your transitions maybe easier, did it also make it harder because you had other people gunning for you because of who you are?
Yeah, no doubt about that. Definitely felt like there was always like a target around me. Maybe not pointed directly at me, but definitely felt like there was always like someone, you know, on my heels. And really a lot of that too was just, you know, hey, yeah, we were at that situation in college, like young guys, right? We're all kind of like jealous of each other because we all want to be the one guy that's on the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so there's a balance between that. And the cool thing is that, you know, once you disarm that like natural jealousy, you realize that you're pretty much the exact same person as the other guy. It's just that my father happened to be maybe a little bit better at the sport than his father, or maybe his father was good too, and my dad just got lucky with the opportunity.
For sure.
You know.
Do you think, you know, it's funny because you brought up target on the back.
Go ahead.
You know, having the success you did back in high school,
right.
You know, only losing, I think, 3 games out of your entire high school
Correct.
career. And then on top of having the last name Sims,
right.
And being a top recruited quarterback coming out of high school, that transition to college, do you think a lot of those factors played into having that quote unquote target on your back? You know, being successful, having that last name, and also just being, you know, having that ranking on top of everything else? Or is it just you go into it and it's like, hey, we're all starting from, you know, scratch again, and we're, you know, I'm trying to take your spot, you're trying to take my spot, and
yeah,
it's a free for all.
There's definitely a duality to that, you know, that I always kind of like constantly had to fight, especially in my younger years. I feel like, you know, like when you're a young teenager, you know, you don't really truly understand why everyone is like so on top of you, you know, but you know, of course I kind of understood this by the back end of my high school career because yeah, like, you know, the more I play football, the more I'm into it, the more I really pay attention to it, the more I'm like, oh yeah, my father was a damn good football player. He was very popular in this area,
yeah. You
know, and maybe some of those fathers would like their sons to sack their old hero or vice versa, something like that. But it was something that I definitely maybe struggled with like early in my early teenage years, just trying to find kind of like my own place.
Like an identity.
And an identity, yeah. You know, like, I always was fighting that too. I was telling recruiters this too as well, just like, you know, like my father's the man. I love my father, but I am my own man. And I do want to just play the game and enjoy the game how I want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I tried to establish that for myself early on just to make sure that I wasn't like chasing like a ghost, you know, because I don't think that's a way to play a sport. You know, and that's the reason why I'm still playing to this day, I think, too, because I truly love it. I truly love the grind of it. I think there's still for me to offer to the game.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's how I kind of found my way, you know, through that thought process.
Yeah, it's kind of like Coach Adam and I were speaking about it a couple episodes ago. In order to be successful at something or continue to do something for a long period of time, you have to have a tremendous amount of love and passion for it.
Right.
Whereas if you didn't, I'm sure at this point, if you didn't have love or passion for the game, you probably wouldn't necessarily be in the game.
Oh, I would have quit 10 years ago. Yeah. You know, I mean, for real, you know.
Was there any point in time, I just want to piggyback off that, Coach, that you ever felt that you were losing any love or passion for it, whether it be in high school, college, in the pros? It's like, maybe this is just not for me.
There was definitely a time period where I was at Tennessee where I kind of lost a little bit of like my love for the game. And that was only because of the people and the environment that was around me. And I felt like those people were trying to, I mean, they weren't trying to. I essentially was used at Tennessee as a scapegoat, very similar to how Jared Garantano was used these past years too as well. You know, the fact is that the team was projected for good things for his past 2 years, and they struggled. So they kind of, I feel like, blamed him because it's easier for them to blame the quarterback and then hope for the next guy to maybe show some life and energy, right? When really, like, the product is still the same.
Yeah.
Right? And the only difference, I think, was we knew we were bad when I went to Tennessee, and they were just looking for kind of a spark for the new coaching staff to make it seem like they were going in the right direction. The weird thing is that, like, when I was going through this, they had the exact same record the next year and the year after that, even when they were supposedly in the right direction.
So yeah, it's pretty much like the stats and facts sort of speak for themselves at that point.
And it's like, yes, some of the stats maybe have looked good, and it was because we were playing, really average teams too as well. And that was what I think really bothered me as well. It's like I really worked super hard to survive, with 5 freshman offensive linemen in the SEC, where my first 6 games of my career, 5 of them were top 15 opponents.
Crazy.
And 3 of them were top 10 opponents. And, and then I get benched for, unfortunately, like the worst teams in the league. So then when we do well against those teams, I'm like, well, wait, like maybe they're right. But then I'm like, well, no, they're not right. Like these teams are bad and they're more equal to what we are, So that was a thing that I constantly kind of had to, continue to remind myself that I was better than what, they saw in me. And that was really just up to me whether or not I was going to continue to pursue that. And luckily I did.
And that's always been an interesting aspect to me. Coach Adam just mentioned before, through your high school career, you only had, 3 losses?
Right.
And I'm going to assume prior to high school, you probably were on some successful teams.
Yeah, give and take. Yeah.
Okay,
so football-wise, terrible.
Okay.
Until my 8th grade year.
Got it.
Yeah, basketball, baseball, decent.
So
probably.
some players is definitely different for when you're talking about maybe like a Trevor Lawrence or a Tua, whereas
right.
all throughout high school and college, depending on how long they stay in college, it would be upwards of 8 years. Well, they're only going to have a handful, if even,
right.
of losses. And then, for the most part, wind up on an NFL team that's at the bottom of the totem pole.
Right.
So how do you go from winning essentially almost all the time to now losing a lot of the times? Like, how is that mental adjustment?
I think we see that type of example happen a lot in the NFL today, where you see these high draft pick quarterbacks and, they have a subpar year or they go 500 and they see the criticism that they handle during that. And you even see the criticism that quarterbacks get, like Aaron Rodgers, who just went to the NFC Championship game.
Second year in a row.
For the second year in a row,
yeah.
Right? So obviously that's a heavy burden on his chest and his career, right? But also too, like I think, people just in general have to understand how difficult the game is. And that, really for Trevor Lawrence, hey, it's awesome for him. It's been a great experience. But also, too, like that kind of scares me in a sense, too, as well, because when you go to a team maybe like Jacksonville next year, 500 would be amazing, right? And that's possible, right? But also, too, be ready for 1-15 potentially, too, and being able to respond and grow from that, too, as well.
Yeah.
So there's a certain level of stubbornness, a certain level of naiveness, right? But also, too, like you guys were saying, just like a passion and attitude to continue to get better at it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but, having the so-and-so success up until your 8th grade year and then having that great success at Bosco
right.
and obviously the ups and downs at Tennessee and then the career you had in the NFL.
Right.
I think you sort of, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but like you've seen it all. Whereas a lot of these up-and-coming athletes have had so much success throughout their youth, high school, college careers.
Yeah.
And then if they are to make it to the NFL and then all of a sudden, bam, where it's pretty much cutthroat to some extent, and you can elaborate on that if you want to, some of them fold under the pressure.
Absolutely.
And it's not only just in the NFL, but you also see it in college too.
Right.
I mean, you want to
I wouldn't even really say that it's like they fold under the pressure, but there is kind of like they lose sight of what they're playing the game for and why. They lose sight, too, of, like, the competition of the game. And also too, it just as like a side story, right? That I think kind of sums up what we're talking about a little bit. The year that Belichick and them lost in the Super Bowl to the Giants, right? When they were undefeated, right? The main thing that Belichick always says is he's like, I wish we would have lost one game in the regular season. So we would have at least tasted defeat one time to then been like, okay, we are not perfect. We can be beat. Now, what can we do to keep getting better from that? And I think that's something that served me extremely well as I got to the NFL. I had been beaten. I had been knocked down. I've been punched in the face. I've had things that have gone well, haven't gone well. And that was what I think gave me that good mix of, hunger and understanding to continue to push through, a situation that was, definitely stacked against me. And that was where that naiveness comes into play, where I just said, you know what, I'm just going to go out there and do it because I know I can do it. And if it works out, great. And if not, we'll see what happens, Yeah.
Yeah, bringing up, since you brought up the Patriots and Belichick, and obviously Tom Brady is on his way to another Super Bowl. So last episode, Coach Adam and I were discussing Tom Brady's 43 years old.
Right.
So his longevity in the NFL has been incredible.
Right.
Now, obviously, you're going to be able to speak better to it than I am. He's obviously a sick talent, and he probably has a phenomenal football mind.
Right.
But in your opinion, as a fellow quarterback, what do you think is the biggest factor that's given him that longevity?
I think the main factor is this. He was able to grow as a player in the exact same environment that was built around him and the rest of the team for one main goal over and over and over again. So as much as we want to pin this Belichick versus Brady type of thought process, as far as I'm concerned, Brady needs to win 2 more Super Bowls to be on Belichick's level, because everyone forgets Belichick won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants as a D coordinator.
That's so true.
So it's like he's won it as a coach, as an assistant coach, right? Brady's won it at New England. He's playing it again now, which is phenomenal and is amazing, right? It really is. It's truly amazing. But I do think him being groomed in that environment year after year after year is part of the reason why, right, it does look maybe so easy for him now. And that being said, hey, he's still struggling in the game. The game is still a team game. And, quarterbacks, like always, we get too much credit and too much blame. They're in the third quarter. You can't really seriously look at him with a serious face and be like, yeah, Tom Brady was awesome. No, he was playing terrible in the third quarter. But at the same time, too, it's a team game. Their defense played well. They didn't give up too many points off of the turnovers, right? And really, at the end of the day, he just made sure that the game was long enough to where they made the last play when it was needed, right? And when you look at Tom's career in general, if Seattle runs the ball on 4th and 1 on the goal line with Marshawn Lynch, they probably win that game, right? Then there's the Adam Vinatieri 2 field goal kicks to win the game in the last second.
Yeah.
The tuck rule against Oakland, right? And the AFC Championship game was huge.
The trajectory of the entire
that was huge, right?
quote, dynasty. Everyone
forgets too as well that first Super Bowl really is about Belichick stopping the greatest show on turf, right? Because that was the greatest offense that the NFL had seen at the time. Kurt Warner was the hottest new thing in the league.
Yeah.
And that's really the storyline of the team. And over the years, it's been built around now Tom's greatness, right? Because that perception has now become reality. And because, too, the league is based off of the popularity of that single position. And that's totally cool. I just want teams and people to understand, too, that, it is still a team game. And Tom has just been fortunate enough in his environments that he's been able to take advantage of a lot of these opportunities, which he has, and that is credit to him and his hard work and his discipline as a player.
Now, let me ask you this.
Sorry for that long answer. Jeez.
No, that was good.
Long-winded.
We needed that.
Jeez. Deep breath. All right. Here we go.
I 100% agree. I think the environment itself plays a huge factor into it. Be that we, Coach Dan and myself, are performance coaches.
Right.
We also are a little biased to, obviously, the training aspect and how it can, be a benefit to a lot of these players.
For sure.
What would you say for a guy like Tom or a guy like Drew Brees, even let's get out of the sport of football, a guy like LeBron James, they're in their late 30s, early 40s, or mid 40s, still playing at a very, fair to say, high level. Do you attribute that to their training, to their habits, their daily living, or also the system that they're in as well too?
I think it's a combination of all of those things. It really is. And it's kind of a perfect storm. And it's one of those things too as well where you just, maybe for an example, like for certain players, it's easier to create this environment that's easy to duplicate when you've been in the system, you have the monetary means to continue to keep your life that exact same way. Sure. I think the reason why you see some guys that have the potential to do it, maybe some opportunities or they don't seize a moment like maybe they should, and then it's really hard to kind of play catch up, for the rest of your life. I'm fortunate enough where I can still keep playing the game or trying to play the game just because of the fact that like I was giving myself a good foundation personally with my family, and then also too with my earnings as a player too as well. If I didn't make that money as a player earlier in my career, I would have probably transitioned into life much quicker than I did. But since I had that foundation, it kind of gave me a little bit of a gray area where it's like, oh, okay, I could keep chasing this dream a little bit longer because, I'm not totally stressed about paying rent this second. Yeah. Right. And that's just, I was fortunate enough to get to that point. In Tom's case and Patrick Mahomes' case and all these guys' cases like Russell Wilson and them, their entire life is formulated around them performing well, and their significant others know that too as well. And just like my wife knows that too. There's certain times where like I got to coach her up like she's one of my QBs, because I'm just like, all right, like, hey, like this is the goal. This is what we're doing. You like the lifestyle. Let's keep doing this, so we can continue to accomplish these things that we want.
Broken, don't try to fix it or anything like that.
Well, it's just, it's just a lot, to be a really good player and to be a really good person and all, like, so like that's why I said that balance, like, is key. It's really hard, to constantly find that balance, especially too when you're involving other people's lives into it as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think I got an interesting question, or it could be a stupid question. You'll let me know, I guess. Right?
There's no such thing as a stupid question, Coach.
No, that's not true.
It could be switching. It's staying on football. It might be switching gears a little bit, but quarterback is obviously, like you just said, they're overly blamed or they're overly glorified, right?
Right.
Okay. So defense aside, we're not thinking about defense. I'm just talking about the quarterback and offensive side of the ball.
Right.
Two quarterbacks. Both are equally talented.
Mm-hmm.
One is super cerebral.
Right.
Understands the game. One is not as cerebral. Okay. The super cerebral quarterback has a mediocre average coach. The not so cerebral quarterback has a phenomenal coach. Do they balance each other out, or does one outperform the other?
I would say that they potentially could balance each other out. Whereas I would say the guy who maybe is super athletic or dominant in one field that has a coach that maybe could take advantage of that more often than not, right? Now, also, there is the human element of it too as well. So that's where I think a lot of coaches too, they love the cerebral guy. But there's a reason why that most of the really good guys that we want to be like in the NFL are not so that way. Or at least not anymore. The old generation definitely was that way, and it seemed cliquish that way. Where it was like they just were smarter at the game. Now you could see like and this is something I've kind of like established in my own thought process of thinking of the game. Football and sports in general, it's a physical IQ. So there's an IQ on paper that's like, all right, you could be a mathematician, as the smartest guy in the country. But it's like, all right, that person doesn't have a physical IQ. They can't dribble a basketball and then swing a baseball bat and then, throw a football, right? Whereas I think like football players, athletes in general, right, there's that physical IQ. Okay, we might not be book smart, but our bodies are connected in a way that works with our brain in a way that you will never really understand, right? So in that sense, like, I know it's a weird way to answer it, but I just really think that like the better coach will always get more out of whatever player he has, no matter what. And that's really the short answer to your question.
That makes sense.
Right. But
that makes sense.
Long way to say it.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a better coach because obviously on top of being an NFL player, you also are a coach to a lot of high school, college QBs. How would you say the transition from playing the sport to coaching now said position or sport has worked with you?
I've been fortunate the fact that like quarterback, I feel like you're always kind of a coach no matter what.
Okay.
So Tom, for example, like he's a really good coach on and off the field. There's no doubt to me that this last weekend in the game, it seemed like the most New England-esque type of looking team that I've seen as far as just the plays, the type of plays they've run. And to me, I think that was like his influence of like, hey, in critical situations, we have done this in the past, right? Or they have done this in the past that works really well here. And there was a few times I feel like in the game where you saw like hard, heavy play action, throw it and just dump it right over the line of scrimmage for like a first down when it was like 2nd or 3rd and 1. One was for a touchdown, another one for an explosive play. And I think you could see that like his knowledge as a player / coach is still helping him now. That same thing is happening for me too as well. Me being a quarterback, coaching other people on the field constantly, it's helped me transition into the coaching world easily because I've already been verbalizing it without even really realizing that I'm a coach already.
Yeah. And that brings me to this question. This is actually one of the questions I thought of.
We got a whole lot of questions for you.
That's right.
When we were training earlier, because you run Sims Complete QB. So through your journey of still chasing that NFL dream, you kind of created your own business, which is pretty awesome when you think about that. So with your quarterbacks, you're working on their throwing mechanics, their footwork as a quarterback, right? So obviously in your training sessions, I see you sometimes here throwing. There's no defense there.
Right.
So my question is, how do you mentally prepare them to have those skills that you're teaching them transfer over to a field when now they have 11 other guys in the field trying to rip their head off? Like,
right.
how do you transfer them mentally in that sense?
Well, the one thing that I always remind the guys is this, when we're working out, especially like this early in the off season, is we're focused on like the micro aspects of the game. So it's like now I really just want you to focus on just dropping back, being athletic, and how to just throw the ball with confidence, with power, with touch, all the different like styles of throws that we would make, right? And I say this because, the main thing that I get across to the kids first is to have the confidence to move and throw it where they think they're going to throw it. That's like job one, I think, for any quarterback coach. Give the quarterback the confidence that he needs to say, okay, there's the target, turn and throw it to him, right? You'd be amazed, I think, by how many guys that like the first few times that I've worked with him, where I'm just like, you can kind of feel like he's scared to throw it because he knows deep down in his heart of hearts, he's like, I don't know where this is going, but he's going to let it go. Now, the thing that I've been always trying to get across to the guys, especially early on in like an off-season setting, is just like, guys, just let it go. Learn to let it go to get something great. Like Newton's third law, right? It's like to get, what is it? It's like you have to let something go to get something in return, right?
Yeah.
So the same thought for us, right? We have to let go of the ball with total faith, right, that it's going to get to it without the fear, right, of failure. And you'd be shocked to see like how many young guys that resonates extremely well with them, because that's really all that they're lacking in some cases, is just the confidence to say like, I can drop back and throw it to this person right there without hesitation.
It's funny because I remember one time.
Then the other aspects come easier. But yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good. There was one time, I think Matt just wanted to throw the ball around. So, I was catching for him and he almost like broke my thumb. Ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to let you know, Matt Sims throws like a missile. All right. But I was throwing back to him and then.
Wait, can we break into a real story real quick? Because I want to see if you remember this.
Don't let me forget this story, by the way.
I don't actually even remember the guy's name, but we have a lot of people that work here at Priestley Fairlawn. So, Brandon Wood.
Right.
So there used to be an employee here that worked underneath Brandon Wood.
Right.
And you know how this is maybe 8 years ago? The staff at the time, we always played touch football,
right,
on the turf.
Right.
It was like almost every day we had games.
You guys had like a 7-on-7 team for a minute too, right?
Yeah,
right.
I wasn't invited.
And one of the days we're like warming up, it got pretty serious because we were filming it. Like there was a couple of weeks where this guy who I'm talking about would bring in a camera.
Right.
He posted up right here in the balcony and he would film the games.
Right.
Jesus.
So during this time, he was setting his camera up on the turf. I don't know if you remember this. And you were throwing the football around, I think, with RJ at the time.
Right.
And for whatever reason, one of the balls got away, whether RJ didn't catch it or got away, hit the floor, and ripped this guy in the face. Do you remember this?
I do, yes.
Oh my God. I just had to bring that up. To this day, anytime Coach Sully and I talk about this, we are laughing for at least 20 minutes because this guy got pulverized.
Right.
With the ball thrown from Matt Sims.
I got even a better one for you.
Wait, hold on.
Go ahead.
You can't just say he got ripped in the face. What happened? Did he break his nose?
No.
It's it bounces.
He did have a little bit of that corner of the football. He had a little bit of
a little welt.
He had a Wilson W on the side of his face. You know?
He throws like listen, I knew he threw hard, but when he threw it and like the first catch I had, I was like, I think I broke my thumb. Honestly.
So here's a story, right, real quick, of just like bad news bears type of thing. After practice, I'm in camp with the Falcons, hot as hell. I'm like, all right, let me get a few extra reps and kind of walk through some of the practice reps that you don't get, right? So you're just trying to get some mental reps. So I get some kid to catch for me. And, usually the guy who ends up catching for you at like the end of practice usually can't catch, but he's the only guy that's willing to do it. So you're like, all right, screw it. Like, I can take it when I'll get, just like, let's get some reps in, right?
Let's go.
So the guy posts up. I'm like, all right, hey, stand over here. I'm going to pretend like you're number 2 in the read. I'm going to throw it to you. Throw it out there. Throw it like a good throw, right? And it goes through his hands, right?
Oh, geez.
And it goes past him, and it. You know how sometimes when it hops onto the turf and it almost picks up more speed, right? So
the velocity vector of this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know how the centrifugal force picked up even more off the ground, right?
Big word,
yeah, that's right, kid.
Matt's a smart guy, by the way.
But now, right, it hits the ground, it starts to accelerate even more, and who takes the back end of this throw but Matt Schaub's like 2-year-old daughter?
Oh my gosh.
Man, yeah, seriously.
That's why he's not in Atlanta, guys.
And cut the next day. But yeah, like I threw it and I turned away immediately. As soon as it happened, I was just like,
it wasn't me. Like this guy ran out like a second grader would do. Wasn't me. I didn't throw the pen. That wasn't me.
Oh man. And of course Matt Schaub, being, the Pennsylvania, Virginia guy that he is, Northeastern sarcasm.
She's fine.
He would bring it up like all the time. Like, oh, that was a great throw. Just like Matt's throw after practice the other day when he hit my 2, all
went
the
to
time.
the ER.
And I'm just like, Matt, let it go already. Jeez. I'm sorry for giving your daughter your first concussion.
I just realized there was Matt Sims, Matt Ryan, and Matt Schaub.
And then our quarterback coach was Matt LaFleur.
No way.
Who was the head coach of the Packers.
I just realized that. Wow.
And our kicker was Matt Bosher. Our punter was Matt Bosher. Our kicker was Matt Bryan.
Can I dive into this real quick? But I'll get back to my other question. Because it's funny you say that.
It's funny we bring that up.
It's real funny. Go ahead. Make fun of me, guys. I dare you. But it's really interesting to see nowadays that a lot of these quarterback coaches or offensive gurus are like becoming real successful coaches in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Like, why is it? Like, because I always was on the interpretation like, offense wins games, defense wins championships type of mentality.
Right.
When like most of these coaches that are going to, the 2 coaches that are going right now to the Super Bowl, Andy Reid and my gosh,
Bruce Arians.
Bruce Arians are sort of offensive
minded.
Yeah, offensive minded gurus.
Right.
Why do you think it is? Like
I will say that the head guy. Both head guys are offensive-minded, right? But both guys definitely do have 2 defensive-minded coaches, Spagnuolo and Todd Bowles.
Yeah, Spag again, wow.
Yeah, Spags again, and guys that, maybe struggles as a head coach their first time around. Well, in Todd's case, right? But like really good coaches know that their side of the ball extremely well. Know both sides of the ball extremely well, right? And these guys have proven multiple times over that like in a 1 game off situation, they can coach up their defense to stop any great offense. Just like how you saw Spags last year against the 49ers offense, they rushed for 60 yards in the game. Yeah. When they were essentially averaging like 150. And that was like the average. Whereas really every now and then they were breaking off like 200, 250, so and that showed as well too in the NFC Championship game too, really. The difference in the game is Tampa Bay's defense out-hit Green Bay. And that's how I felt watching the game. When I was seeing Whitehead and, Devontae David out there running around, like I was just like, man, this team is playing and running hardest to the football. And, it's simple, but it's like they're getting after him. and you could feel that physicalness, I think, from where you were sitting and watching the game in your own homes, how, for whatever reason, it seemed like Tampa was always hitting Green Bay harder than the other way around.
Yeah, for sure.
And, at the end of the day, it is a physical game, and this is why what you said earlier, I think that does hold true more often than not, that the more physical, dominant defense of the day usually wins the game for their team, or helps their team win more often than not. Yeah.
No, it's just interesting because, seeing how the game has evolved throughout the past years or decades, whatever you want to say, it's noticing, I guess, back then where you had a lot more defensive-minded coaches being more. I mean, Bill Belichick, for example.
Right.
He was a defensive coordinator for the Giants.
Right.
He's been so successful in New England. But now you're seeing that shift. What I see, though, and this is just my own opinion, is though, Andy Reid is a good offensive coach, this and that, he's also a really good game manager.
Andy, in his history, has not been known to be a great manager.
Really?
In his history, has not been known. Of recent, though, these past 2 or 3 years, definitely has been getting better.
Do you think that's the way to go almost? Like, let me get the right pieces around me, and then, I'll be that type of game manager, but I'm going to delegate. This is what we're going to do on offense. This is what you want to run on defense. Fine.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, right? I feel like with any type of leadership, that's always that give and take, right? Of finding that balance, right? That kind
Which
of
is
seems
hard
to be
to find,
the key
though.
word today, right? Yeah. But definitely just with coaching in general, you got to remember Andy had to lose in the NFC Championship game 4 times for him to really even get to the Super Bowl. You remember who he lost to in that Super Bowl? That's right, Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, right?
He was on the Eagles, yeah.
Right, and that was the T.O. playing with the broken leg, right? So now fast forward, here's Andy Reid in Kansas City, even with the Alex Smith teams, super close to getting to a Super Bowl, right? Then he said, all right, hey, I'm just going to get a dominant player at the position and then see if that helps me. And it seems like that has been his missing piece.
Yeah.
This is something that I've always kind of said too, even just with Kyle Shanahan and his offenses, right? I don't have to worry about saying this because if he wanted to sign me, he would have done it 6 years ago. So I don't have to worry about it now. But the fact is if Kyle would just share a little bit of his power with a really good athletic quarterback or someone that can make plays off the cuff, he would be that much better. But he's just a little too caught up in trying to do it his way. Right. And not to say that that's wrong, but there is a players and a play, and they both have to match each other.
We always say that. Do you want to?
I just had a question.
Go ahead.
Potentially could be another stupid question because I haven't played a lick of football or ever been
That's
in
right. Question.
an organized.
Comment.
But I've always wondered. You have a head coach, you have an OC, you have a DC, right?
Right.
Say on a team. You have a phenomenal offensive coordinator. You have a phenomenal defensive coordinator. What the hell does the head coach do at that point? In terms of what the contribution to the game. You have an offensive coordinator, phenomenal offensive mind, great play calling, no situation, whatever.
Right.
Same thing on the defensive side. So what's the head coach do at that point?
The head coach's main job is honestly to create a system where he checks each person to make sure that they're doing and getting the game plan correctly.
John Harbaugh?
A la, basically, right, making sure that we go, we check every box as far as this scenario. Now, is it possible? No, it's not. But the more that you review and talk about it, the more you discuss about it, the more that it's easier for you to make that decision. In Matt LaFleur's case this past weekend, I think that was a guy that overthought a situation and thought, okay, let me help my team win by lengthening the game, right? And that's really what he thought. He thought, let me lengthen the game to give us more opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Whereas really, what was his natural instinct? To go for it. Then just go for it, And that's something that he had to learn the hard way, unfortunately, and then take, obviously, the fire that everyone else is spewing at him right now because of that decision. Now, we got to remember, too, that decision was made in 30 seconds or less. So it just kind of puts in perspective how quickly on these guys' feet they really have to think and how, BS it is for our average fans, just like with us in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, right? And that's another Super Bowl that Tom potentially could have lost, right? Just like some of the other games.
Yeah.
But here's that example, right? Oh, they should have ran it. Really? You were really thinking that on the couch at your house with a beer and salsa
before the play
that you were saying they got to run the ball?
Before the play even was snapped, right?
Please.
Yeah.
Now, the weird thing is that me and a teammate of mine were actually having this discussion on the field because we were, obviously so engaged. He goes, hey, what are we doing here? And I'm like, hey, we're throwing it. He goes, man. And I said, I know. We should probably run it, right? Now, I'm a practice squad player, Now, deep down, I kind of look back at myself and I'm like, man, I should have just ran down to DQ and been like, call a timeout, run the ball. But at the same time, too, I trusted in the people to make the right decision for us because that's their jobs, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy, man. Just kind of how intricate the game is, and how simple it is too at the exact same time.
Being a vet that you are in the league for so many years, do you give like a guy like Matt LaFleur, he's the head coach, 2 years with Green Bay?
It's 2 years. Yeah, he's been to 2 NFC Championship games now in 2 years.
Do you cut him a little bit of slack, or is the pressure like that much more on him?
Pressure is probably that much more greater. And I don't know, do we really cut anybody slack anymore in our society? It's like we're so quick to just like put judgment on people and to throw like shade on them so quickly, then we rejoice when the person comes out of it great. Like, oh, I always knew, but you didn't know. You were just going with the flow.
Yeah, it's I think when and again, I don't know if this could be up for a debate or something like that, but like when the hype is there, for instance, perfect example, last year's Cleveland Browns team had so much hype with them, right?
Right.
Some people projected them to go to a Super Bowl last year.
Right.
They finished 6-10, I think?
Something like that,
Something like that. And mind you, the year before that, they weren't so great. I mean, they finished real well against so-and-so teams, 7-9 or whatever that was. But again, they couldn't live up to that hype. So everyone was able to then, at that point in time, go and attack them and say what they want to say.
And that's where media hype and real hype are two different things.
Such a bitch, pardon my language.
Two different
media
things.
Hype is such a bitch.
I could bleep it out.
Yeah, that's right.
Bleep both those out. But yeah, and so
you see it more often with players than you do with teams, right? I think for example, just like with Tim Tebow and Johnny Manziel, right? The hype with them is they were two really good players. Now the fact is that they probably weren't as dominant like we would think they were, with the fact of how much media attention and hype they got, right? So that was one of those weird things. And then who was there to crush them as soon as it didn't go well? The same people who created them. So it's a double-edged sword that way.
It's crazy.
Yes. I think you got a client soon, so I think we got to wrap up in a little bit. But before we do, and
2 minutes and 35 seconds.
That's right.
Before we do, I think the coolest thing is when you get people that have spent time in the league and are still trying to get into the league and things like that. The stories are freaking awesome. I've always heard stories of that. It's crazy because, as us regular folk, if I were to say we don't know this.
We are special people too, Coach.
I'm not saying we're not, but I'm saying we don't know these behind the scenes stuff. So without you without putting you on the spot, and also keeping in mind that there's probably some kids that listen to this. What's like one of the most crazy stories that you could think of through your time in the NFL that you can kind of
you have 1 minute and 45 seconds.
Well, I guess the one story that I do enjoy to tell people, right? It's a story that I shared with Sully too, as well, on his show during the quarantine. We were playing against the Cincinnati Bengals. I was a part of the New York Jets at the time. I was the backup. We went to Cincinnati. We were really getting whooped bad. Like, it was rough.
Who was the starting quarterback at the time?
It was Geno Smith. I don't know why you had to, so
you can leave that out.
Yeah. Now, we go into the game, right? We're getting, pretty manhandled bad, right? And of course, in these situations, I'm like, all right, here we go, Matt. Like, get ready to go. Like, it's game time for you. Meanwhile, while everyone's turning off their TV, I'm turning myself on to get ready to go in the game, right? So I go in, I'm jacked up, I'm excited as hell, right? I go out there, there's James Harrison on the other side, the guy that's tackling people on commercials now, right? And
he's on the Bengals.
We get into a huddle. We get into the huddle, and I call play. I think it was like gun trips right, 3-jet, all go special, stop. And I
acting like we knew what that play was.
I'll explain it later. As I call the play, I'm like, ooh, this kid in the huddle with me hasn't been on the team for maybe more than a week or two, right? So as we break the huddle, ready, break, I'm like, hey, Zach, you good? Right? And he looks at me, he goes, you talking to me? And I'm like, yeah, you good? You know where you're, and he goes, no, I don't know what the I'm doing. Now, meanwhile, this is at the line of scrimmage. So the defense goes, and I'm just like, yep, here we go. This is the NFL, right? And sure enough, luckily, they played like a really soft, like Tampa 2. So when they dropped back really far, I just took off and ran for like a 25-yard gain. But it was funny as hell that like it was so backyard with this conversation with him.
Gosh.
And he's telling me he has no idea what the F he's doing. And then the defense is laughing at us, you know?
That probably happens more often.
And meanwhile, too, we were down like 30 points at the time. So it was like a double, you know? Yeah, it was.
That's an
bad.
awesome story, though. That's awesome. Because, again, people don't think about that. These are guys getting, you know, on the field paying millions of dollars. They're on national television. But on the field level, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing.
And just think in his case, too, he got signed by a team after being cut. And here he is playing in a game 2 weeks later, and you're just hoping that in that 2 weeks' time, he's covered the plays that you're about to run. And if not, I got to tell you what to do in a very short amount of time, you know?
Like
and
seconds, if anything.
No doubt. And like we said, right, this happened all within probably 10, 15 seconds.
Jeez.
Right? So just think, when you got the season on the line, you know, let's be a little bit more understanding of when these coaches sometimes make the wrong decision. Yeah. You know, they're not perfect. They are human. And, you know, in some of these cases, like a Todd Bowles, for example, those guys, who knows? Those guys are going to be great if they get another opportunity at being a head coach. You know, just because those lessons they learned the first time around are going to be that much easier for them to understand. Just like how we made that same correlation with me and my pedigree and all that, and that transition forward, that applies to everything. And the same with you guys, too, as well.
Yeah.
I think,
damn.
I think that was a no, I did not. You got to wrap it up. I think that was a.
I think we should definitely.
We appreciate you coming on, being our first guest, taking the first seat at the coach's table.
Woo!
Appreciate Sims Complete again, guys. Follow his Instagram
Sims Complete
account.
QB.
Sims Complete QB. Yes, sir.
QB,
Sims
I
Complete
did my
QB.
research. I did my research.
Well, I just ran it off the top of my head.
Do your homework, bro. All right, do your homework. All right. Don't forget your notebook next time.
Thank you, Matt. Pleasure again. Thank you for coming on. Hopefully,
Thank you for
can
having me,
have
guys.
You again
Appreciate
in the
it.
future.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.